Welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at a somewhat older game. By old, I mean
2019.
2019, so 2 years old. So not very old.
Yeah.
But it's not fresh off the press. So this is Devil Dog's Belleau 1918 from Worthington. This game's designed by John Paniski and John Paniski.
Junior, his son. Yep.
So this is a World War I game. Part of our Guns of August event where we're trying to play all our World War I games. So
we're getting there.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely.
We're about halfway through. So this game is a two-player hex and counter game that is card-assisted.
Yeah.
Like, cards are used to determine the kind of actions that you're doing. Kind of in a way that Commands and Colors is like a card-driven game, right?
Yeah.
It's not a CDG in the traditional sense of what you would, Paths of Glory, all that. But the cards power what you do on your hex and counter board, basically. And
very smartly as well.
Yeah,
I think it's a very unique and smart use of that type of card-assisted action.
Yeah, and so Belleau Wood, if you don't know, is the first major engagement with the U.S. Marine Corps in World War I.
Yep.
And they got their name Devil Dogs, which is an apocryphal story.
Yeah.
So
it's Teufelhunden in German, right?
Which isn't
even a word.
It's not even a real term, and
Yeah.
the whole story is shrouded in myth and mystery,
Right.
and isn't really real, and it's something that was
Someone just wrote it because it sounded good.
yeah,
At the moment.
who knows? But
Yeah.
the engagement did happen, and they did fight. So this is late war stuff. The Germans are some of the German regiments are weaker. They have fewer steps than the U.S. units, the Allied units.
And that's really more a condition of the war having lasted for so long
Yeah.
with the Germans. They're starving, they're running out of ammo, they've taken a lot of attrition over the years, and here come the Americans who are fresh into the battle.
Fresh off the boat. Yeah, just,
Ready to go.
And this is a fight over a lot of hills and woods, and there's victory points to be had, and both sides are kind of maneuvering and moving around to try and gain the advantage and get in good attacks, basically.
Yeah.
And it is a very interesting game. I felt like this has a lot of non-standard rules in it.
100%.
Like all good Worthington games,
2 rule books.
it's got 2 game books.
Oh, two playbooks, right.
Yeah, which is
2 playbooks.
I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, I think they wanted the 2 rule books.
Normally you get 2 rule books and a playbook. We got 2 playbooks and a rule book.
Yeah.
But the rules are that one. It's 8 pages.
Yeah, it's
Is it
not
10, 12? It's
12.
Technically 12. 12 pages of rules.
and it's a lot. It is a lot of text for the most part.
But that includes the first 2 or 3 pages which aren't rules. So the
Right.
reality is you're looking at 8 pages of rules in this game.
yes.
And I really like their games because it says victory within 3 hours. You will have victory within 3 hours in this game. The rules are unpretentious. They are not overly complicated. It's not a 30-page rule book.
No.
It's an 8-page rule book that has all the rules in you need to play the game, and it's generally speaking very clear.
I will say this, though. You have to have a different mindset when you come into this game.
Specifically this one, yeah.
Yeah, there are no combat factors.
Yep.
There's no CRT.
There's no dice roll.
You're not rolling any dice. You are literally exchanging hits with your enemy based on some card advantages that you've got.
The orders you issue.
The orders you issue. So it is a very unique experience in that way. I think it's very good. I really wish we had played this 2 years ago when it was new, but I think it came out near the end of the year. But it is very different than any game I think I've ever played on this subject and in this. It is very unique.
Yeah, I think it's very, very cool.
And the reason I brought that up is because the rules really, you're reading them, you're going, well, where's the CRT and where's the combat value?
Yes.
What happened was we were falsely inserting our past experiences into a new game.
And of all games, this is one you can't do it with. There's so much that works just that little bit extra differently from what you've played in the past that you can't bring as much to the table with your past knowledge.
Well, one other thing on that, as we were setting up the units, I'm like, they don't have any. I'm looking at them going,
what numbers?
What am I missing?
Yeah.
It literally is just a unit designation, and what's the other information on there?
That's
a step, like the step. Like here, that's a 2-step unit, and
that's the battalion.
Or okay, yeah.
It's just that,
and then a little silhouette.
And and it's what the unit is. Is it infantry or is it heavy weapons team?
Yeah, mortar and a machine gun. So it once again, I think the rules, had I had that line of thinking going in, I think our first 15 minutes would have went much differently.
Yes,
we were kind of sitting there going, what do we do?
Yeah, so just as an insight, when we learn games, we usually set it up and are like reading and playing and
pushing stuff around.
Usually mess some stuff up at the beginning, then you're like, oh, this is how that works. Like, this is the effects of what happened. And then we, play through the whole game kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. This one, of all games, read the rule book from start to finish.
Agreed.
It's all 8 pages.
Yeah,
so
it's going to take you 10 minutes.
Read it all, because you're like, huh? But you've got that in your brain, and then push around some stuff and test it out.
It will make sense then.
Because you'll do some things, and some of the keywords will work a little bit differently than you may have imagined. And you're like, oh, okay. Once you play this, like, if we set this up and play this again, we will be much more informed in the decisions that we make. And there is a good chunk of decision space within it, which I very much appreciate.
Well, and I think along those same lines, it is not just a simple move and shoot. It is you're really trying to understand how terrain affects that.
Yes.
How you are assigning your wounds, and how you're trying to score points. It's not always, I killed a bunch of units. It's, I damaged you a bunch of times, therefore I gained the initiative better. And look, to
then keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
To then maybe finish some of you off next
it's
turn.
Just so interesting, and there's a lot of uniqueness here. I'm actually kind of blown away.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of blown away.
I agree. This is...
And not often do I think we feel that way, but I feel that way with this.
So...
Not over my head, it's just wow.
Outside of all of the initiative and the command stuff, which is itself very cool, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. This game, if you're going to do combat, you're going to have the combat keyword. You basically move your units up, and then, effectively, everyone who's within range of your combat keyword contributes, does damage. They all shoot.
To a total damage pool.
Yeah, and there's combat damage. Yep. So all your infantry do 1 damage. Your machine guns do 2 damage.
Unless those infantry are adjacent.
Or the heavy weapons are adjacent. If everything's adjacent, plus 1 damage.
Or if you've played the bayonet card plus along with your combat.
On top of that.
So you're creating a pool of shared combat damage.
Yes.
And then you as the player get to assign, I think it goes in initiative order.
So yeah, the reactive player does it first, but you have to follow the target priority.
There's priorities, yep.
And so the target priority helps you to just put those out. And so you start with dudes who are in the open, and you have to shoot all the infantry who are out in the open first. Then you have to shoot all of the heavy weapons that are out in the open.
Yep.
Then you have to shoot all the HQ units that are out in the open. And then, and only then, once every single one of them has been assigned a hit, if you still have hits or CDs left to assign, you go to in urban woods or on rail hexes or something like that.
Yeah, right. Rail hexes.
It's like in trains behind those big
rail lines. You're laying behind the.
Only then do you assign to infantry in cover.
Yeah.
Then heavy weapons in cover, and so it's very rare that you're gonna kill those machine gun nests that are in cover, because you have to have killed every single screening unit possible before you start killing them. And it's very different. Every other war game, this guy's attacking him, roll a dice, this is how much damage I do.
You're not targeting an individual unit. I think that was the other thing that I had to get my mind around.
Yeah, a combat is a skirmish, it's a whole battle.
Yeah.
And the board's divided into these 4 sections, and each section is activated. So it's like...
Oh, we haven't even talked about that. That's another cool element.
Kind of like Commands and Colors. The board's divided into sections to help you like focus where your orders are going. But you do all these guys on the front lines in this section, everyone's shooting everyone, and there's return fire, and you may have played some defensive fire bonuses and things like that, or entrenchment, so you can ignore a couple hits or add a couple extra ones. And it's not, oh, my one unit attacks your one unit. We just resolve the entire battle along this section of the battle.
Well, and I think that's more a condition of the scale of the game, right? This is it's a small unit, tactical level game. That it's not a strategic game or an operational. It's just very different. And I think that really, when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. That's why you're doing this.
But and what it does is it kind of changes this game into a maneuver game.
Yeah, we talked about that early on in the second round, I think.
I very much like that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Fields of Fire in a way. You don't roll in that game. Well, you kind of do, but it's like I move here and my units will open fire if there's someone in line of sight. I don't have control over that. They're dudes, there's people over there, they're gonna shoot them.
Right.
This is very much in that way, like, if you're playing that combat, everyone moves up, and then they're all everyone who can is shooting.
Yep. Everybody within range.
So all you're doing is assigning the effective fire to where the targets would be going.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really cool, because then you're like, okay, I'm trying to get my guys up on top of a slope in a woods or something like that.
Yep.
That way I can shoot down the slope or down the hill, and I can shoot everyone in the open, but the return fire they might have a bunch of dudes, but my defensive terrain means their hits are going to be halved. It takes 2 to do 1 damage to me.
To damage.
So I can soak up a lot more of their wounds, even though we have an equal amount of firepower.
Yep.
It's such a cool concept, and it also takes away some of that randomness that you get. Like, oh, I got bad dice rolls.
Yeah.
Not on this one. You might have a bad card draw.
Yep.
But between assigning your cards and your orders, you'll get some randomness and some mistakes in that. But you get to choose. You got a lot of choice over your maneuver tactics and where you lay down your fire. Yeah. If you're very, very canny about it, you can basically pick your targets that way.
By the way you've maneuvered.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very key point. Our comment to this point is you really don't pick a target. You do by how you move your units.
Yes.
And get within range to effectively hit certain units in the formation.
And one of the other best parts of this is no unit can take more than one loss
from
one
any
step loss
single
from any
source.
So you're so again, you get into the Great World War I stuff. So you're trying to find cards that might have some sniper fire on them, or a barrage, and then you do a combat.
Because that's 3 different types of source.
If you can put on the layers of damage, you can get through people a bit quicker.
Yep.
But the reality is that's hard to do.
Yeah.
And more often than not, you get into that whole, and we talk about this all the time, that attritional style of combat. These guys are all engaged and all damaging each other, and as long as they stay there and we keep playing those combat cards, that exchange of fire is going to keep going back and forth, and everyone's going to be taking damage over the course of the next few combats. It just is a very cool system. I just think it's so interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Yeah, and if you can do a barrage and then do an attack, you can do a lot of damage to people that way.
But if you don't have that, you're just doing a fire attack, and it's you can't do that.
Yeah, you do a fire
It's very
attack,
interesting.
You might then I'm desperately trying to find a rally card on my next one to remove some of those. What are they called? The falter markers.
Yeah, the fault or the
unpinning.
The pinned.
Yeah. This is a very, very cool system. I don't know if I've played anything quite like it.
Well, as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm getting more and more excited about it, because I'm this is really unique.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about the multi-use cards that much, and the initiative system is also very cool.
Yeah.
based on how the battle is going, you're gaining advantage from kind of the momentum.
Yes.
And a morale boost that you're going to throw more of your chits into that cup. Then from that cup, we're going to draw each turn based on the sector. And, you may have 4 things in there. I've only got 2. You're going to be in charge for more often than not. You're going to have the initiative.
But it's still not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed.
It might be a 50-50 across the board, which I really like.
And sometimes there's a stalemate token in there that is... So why that is important is if you believe you can gain initiative, you can really use your cards a little more effectively because guess what? You play your card in the sector before you actually check initiative.
Yeah.
Which is also a very, very interesting way of doing that.
So your hand of cards is the number of sectors in the scenario plus 1.
Yeah.
So if you're playing the introductory scenario, you got 3. Big campaign, you got 5. But yeah, you've got your hand of 5 cards, and each of the cards has an active, a reactive, and kind of like a general order section. And so if you... And most of the combats, the attacks, are in that active section. So if you need to kill guys and make progress to get victory points, you're banking on needing to get that.
Yep. To be aggressive.
You need this kind of initiative token to be the active player. But, you've got to weigh up, this has a really strong active thing, but in this area where I need to defend, this is an extremely good defensive thing. And so it's, first off, where do I put all of these? And then you're hoping that you get initiative based on this little initiative pool. So you assign all of this stuff, and you got this little chip cup. There you go. Found it. And like you said, this is seeded based on basically how many casualties you've inflicted on the opponent and where that sits on the initiative track. So if you've done a lot of damage, the initiative is with you. You'll have more stuff. You'll continue to have the advantage.
Yes.
Which I also really like.
Yep.
It rewards aggression in that sense.
It does.
Which is nice in a war game.
Well, it awards aggression, and it awards really doing a lot of damage to your opponent. Because your troops are going to be more into it. They're going to be...
It's the momentum. They're going forwards.
The morale is high. They're going to continue... And that really played out very well in this system.
So you've played your cards out. They're hidden. Then for each one of these, A, B, C, and D, you pull one of these. Oh, this is a German one. Great. The Germans have the initiative in Section A. And the Marines have initiative in Section B. And then C and D and so on. And in some parts there's these little stalemates where neither side has it. And then once you know that, then you assign your little order tokens. And this is where... you get to choose which of the 3 orders you're going to execute.
On the card that you played.
So
before you knew that.
Right. So I've played the card down, then it's decided yes or no, I do actually have the initiative in that sector. So I really wanted to do an attack here. I put a really good attack card. Well, bully for me, the Marine initiative came out.
Yeah.
And that means I can't even play that attack, that active one. I have to do one of these, the reactive order or this little general order, and you're like... So you can't get into that.
But you got to also plan for that too. You actually have to kind of think about it. I know you don't have an unlimited amount of cards in your hand, but there were times I thought, you know what? I'd rather put this one down because I want to win the initiative and attack.
Yeah.
But my reactive or general order is better on this card. I'm going to put this one down.
I'd rather have 3 okay options than one really good and really bad.
Yep.
And then just get hosed entirely. And so that's some of the thinking you get into, which as a general on the battlefield, that's what I want.
Yeah.
I want to have those choices. Because you put a good card down, you get the initiative, you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And you get to go forward and do everything that you wanted to.
Yep.
But it's such an interesting whole system. And whilst we've described a lot of things that might seem like a little bit heady.
Yeah, you may be like,
boy, it is not complex. The little sequence of play here is really, really good. You're just like, done.
Followed through.
It is not a complicated game in that sense.
The complexity comes in how you have to get in the right frame of mind. You just have to kind of unlearn what you've learned in some ways.
Yeah, the first few turns, it was like, huh? I want to do this thing.
Yeah.
How do I get them to do it?
Yeah.
And you play this card. And then, you do all your moves. I can either move forward or backwards, depending on the type of moves that you've got. Then it has this machine gun fire. And it's kind of an abstract you just lay down machine gun fire.
Yeah.
Like, there is fire going across the battlefield, you will do X amount of damage. So you just kind of do some free hits, basically, within line of sight.
Yep.
Which was also like, does it have to come from one of my machine gun units?
Yeah,
no.
we're like, no, it doesn't.
It can be within line of sight of anyone. It's just kind of like the built into those infantry units.
Yep.
As opposed to the heavy weapons companies, which are more focused areas of that.
But I will say that is one thing. I wish they would have made that a little clearer in the rule book.
Yeah.
Because we kept looking.
Okay. Half a sentence would have clarified.
Yeah, just add a sentence. It does not matter what type of unit is present. Machine gun fire is an abstracted term. You can do it whether you have an MG unit in the sector or not.
Yeah, it says with any unit can give line of sight and you do it, but it's like,
Yeah.
It just if I don't have a single MG unit in this sector, seemingly that doesn't matter. Which it's totally fine because it's again at that level there would have been a couple, but it's just so interesting. Again, how different it is. I'm moving my units, and when you get into those combats, you're like, oh. The first time we resolved combat, it was like, oh, okay. Like, I did 5 hits, you did 7 hits, but between like, a couple of effects on the cards and some of the terrain, you did 2-step losses to my units, and I did 2-step losses to your units. Even though you had a larger number, and it swung the initiative track towards your side, the effect on the board immediately tactically was basically a wash.
Yep.
Now, the effect on the initiative track will build as momentum swings towards you, and that's very cool, and I like that. It's very doing things effectively in this game takes a little bit to get used to.
Well, we talked about that. I think this is a game, literally playing it 3 and 4 times will help a lot because you're going to really understand, okay, this is how I do what I need to do.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to get out of my cards what I really need. And furthermore, you get more, what is that, a 25 card deck, give or take?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, about 20, 30 cards. Knowing, we kind of went through and counted, there's 8 barrages for each of us.
Yeah.
3 gas barrages, one or 2 sausage barrages for the Germans, 1 or 2 accurate artillery strikes.
Ones,
and it's, so you kind of know, okay, that's going to come out 7 or 8 times throughout the game. I got a plan for that. Because, man, those barrages were powerful.
Yes.
Particularly when we were all bunched up and when my units, as the Americans, I really was moving up and advancing, and, man, I was all next to each other.
Yeah.
And that's something I think later I stopped doing as much. I'm like, I'm going to split these guys up a little bit.
But, if I split them up and leave the little victory point hexes,
you don't want to do that.
For that. There's some really cool decisions to be made.
Well, I think that choice and the decisions really is one of the better parts of the game because not only how you use your cards, but the maneuver concept and then really what you're trying to do. What are you trying to accomplish? As the Germans, in this scenario, you really had to take that hill, like, really quick.
Yeah.
And you didn't get the cards to do it, necessarily, right? I got up, I took the hill, and then it's kind of like, oh, crud. You're going to have, but you barraged me, and it was starting to work until I used some of my cards as regroup cards.
Yeah, I ran out of time in that one, sadly.
Yeah, so I felt like there was a lot of back and forth. I felt like both of us had an opportunity early. It just didn't work out for one of us, and next time it'll probably be totally different.
Yes. What I'll do here, I'll show you the map, nice little Rick Barber map we got going on, because we've talked about a lot of things, and
it might be confusing.
Yes, it's not necessarily the most intuitive to translate. So I'll show you what it is, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map, and you can tell this is a very, very classic, very, very typical Rick Barber map, where it looks like, well, it doesn't look like, it is or originally hand-drawn in style, and it looks like it's coloured in with colouring pencils almost. And I believe he's either got a script for it, or he does this all, or did this all, unfortunately, and then it's then scanned in high def into a map with an overlay on it. But very, very typical of his style of map. You can see it's divided into these four areas, these red lines, and that's kind of what we talk about when we mention things like commands and colors, because the cards and the orders that you issue are going to correspond to these different kind of firing lanes and action areas. And so it functions very, very differently from that game. But the way that you're thinking is, I'm thinking about kind of this specific area and a little bit next to it that I might be able to influence. It's not like one whole big thing. It's almost 4 parts of a whole that you have to work in concert with. So you'll have a hand of these command cards. These are the German ones. There's an American deck, or an Allied deck, I should say. And they have 3 different sections on them for an active order, a reactive order, and a general order. And then they also have a historical photo on them, which I also appreciate. And then in line with each of these orders, which are just keywords, there's also machine gun fire and then movement points as well. And those have different colors on them, which correspond to the different types of moves that they are. And we'll kind of go through some of those here. So you're going to have a hand of cards depending on the scenario, where you're at in the scenario, or if you're doing the whole campaign, that kind of thing. But what you're going to end up doing is you're going to have these cards and you're going to assign them to these different regions, and then, eventually each one of those is going to trigger, and you're going to do the actions, resolve the commands on those cards. That's what's going to move your pieces. You're then going to move your pieces, and this looks like a hot mess over here, because I don't know if you could. I knocked the board just now and messed them all up. But what the goal of the game is there's these red kind of, I don't know what you'd call those, little kind of explosion symbols. These are the victory hexes. So it's fighting over and taking those. That's really where a big chunk of your points are going to come from. You want to take those and the areas near them, and also on top of that, inflict losses on the opponent. So the first thing that you do in a turn is you're going to draw these cards, and you have a hand of these, and you have to issue the orders that you want. And immediately you're into having tough decisions to make, because you're going to issue these orders. I say, I'm going to assign this one to this one, and this one to this one. And you do that, you do it face down. So I'm putting them here and putting them here so that the opponent doesn't know exactly what you're doing. But because there's the 3 options, you don't know necessarily which one of these 3 options you're going to be able to take. So what you're doing is you're playing cards saying, I desperately need to do like an attack here. And attacks, or they're called combats, are almost exclusively on these active orders. So I'm playing this here, banking on that I will have the initiative in this section and therefore be able to do the active order. If I don't, and I'm the reactive player, I won't be able to do the combat, and I'll be forced into doing this barrage with the hidden MGs, and I'll be forced into doing a retreat move, which could be very, very bad. Or, if we end up with a stalemate, which is possible, I might be able to trigger this general order instead. So, which again it's maybe not as good, or it's very different. I have to advance in this one. I can reposition this one. I have to retreat in this one. And then there's differing levels of machine gun fire that you'll be able to lay down as well within those. So the decisions that you make just putting your cards out is tough, because this guy has a combat 5. That means everyone who's 5 spaces away from an enemy can really open fire at them. This guy's a combat 2, so it's only like adjacent and 1 space away can fire. So if I've got guys up on a machine gun that's far away, they can't join in a combat 2. They don't contribute any firepower to that. But if it's a combat 5, they do. But then if I end up not as the active player, I got to do a barrage and a hidden MGs here, which might be less good than our defensive fire and on audacity here. So tons of choices to make just from putting your cards out. So once you've put your cards out, and you both do that simultaneously, kind of put all your cards out that you're going to do in all the different regions, then what you do is then you generate the initiative pool. So there's, let me move this over a tiny bit so you can see. There's this track over here. This is green and grey track, which is a swinging pendulum, which will move throughout the course of a turn, and it will move a lot, usually. Wherever the initiative marker is on either side of this tells you what the initiative kind of cup is going to look like. So right now, it's heavily in favor of the Allied player. And that's partly because Germans took a whole bunch of losses just now, and this was the end of our scenario, and I lost very badly. So you're going to get a cup, and you're going to put in just what it says here. So it says 2 Germans. So we put in 2 of these little German initiative chits. 4 US chits. I don't even... Where are they? What did I put them? 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. I covered them up a little bit. And 0 stalemates. Now, if you're in the middle, it's 2 German, 2 US, 2 stalemates, or kind of this little bit of initiative, 2 German, 3 US, 1 stalemate. The stalemates are really interesting as well. So basically what you then do is you shake these up, and you draw the initiative chit. So you go, we'll just go A, B, C, D. You just draw a chit, and so in our scenario, we were just playing with C and D. So you draw one. This one's a German one. Wow, that was quite unlikely. But now there's 4 US and 1 German, so it's probably fairly... Oh my gosh, I drew both the German ones. Amazing. But that's the chit pool, right? It can happen that way. So luckily, as the Germans, maybe I put out some big attacks because I really needed to make some progress, and I got extremely lucky on that draw. Again, that's very unlikely to have happened, honestly. But having done that, we then determine the battlefield initiative. And what you do then is you look at the 4 regions, if you're playing with all 4, and you count up the number of initiative tokens you have out. So there's 2 German ones and none of the others. So Germans have the overall battlefield initiative. There's a couple layers of initiative. I'm going to be the active player in both of these sections, which means I can basically choose any of these to do. But I also have overall battlefield initiative, which means I get to decide which area we do first, basically. And so you can pick and choose them. Oh, I need to get this done to maybe, and it might enable me to move a couple guys over into this section who I can then activate when this one activates later, or I need to make real progress here to put the pressure on and force them to put over so that when they do activate this, they're going to be less powerful. The order in which you activate each of these is very important. But for example, let's just say, generally speaking, if we were playing with 3 areas and we had 2 US and 1 German, obviously the Allied player would then have the overall battlefield initiative. So the US players can say, let's do this one first. And then I'm going to say, okay, well, let's do this one because I want to get it over with. And then the last one's going to be this one. This helps you determine kind of the order in which you do those. So it's kind of crazy that I pulled both of those. So now what you do, having determined who has the initiative here, which means I have it both in these ones. I'm the active player in both of these segments. You have these other little markers, and now you're going to decide whether you put it the A for active, R for reactive, or the G for general. So on this card that I played, I'm going to put this so the little A is facing towards... I'm going the A section here. And on this one, I'm also going to do the A section on my card. And the opponent's going to say, I'm going to be doing like a... Here we go. I'm going to do a G over here. I'm going to do an R. So they put the R facing upwards on that one. So that way, it just to remind you like which one you chose to do. And that's what you're going to execute. And you have to do that now. You can't wait to see the results of something and then choose. You do it now before any action's been resolved. You issue your orders. And again, it's another little layer of decision making. Like, I don't really know quite how this is going to go, but this is the plan that we're going to put into action. Having done that, you do a little bit of mortar fire. And that's not to say that you're mortified. You're firing mortars. And we had here... Gosh, where am I? Did my mortar die? Mortar fire is very simple. Hey, I got one mortar over here. Basically, here, we'll just set up a US Marine mortar right here. And we'll put some Germans over here just for an example. So what you're going to do... Here, we'll German front line. Is... the mortars have, I think, a maximum distance of 5 and a minimum distance of 2. So you're going to count that many spaces away, and you're going to target one particular unit. And you target that unit, and then you're going to roll to see if it deviates. So you're going to get a couple dice, which, hilariously, I have misplaced my dice. I don't know what I did with them. Let me just grab one. So you're going to roll a die, and you're looking at this little deviation chart here. And it's going to move basically, I believe, so it moves 2 hexes from the first chip, place second. Okay, so it's going to move in the forward direction 2 spaces, 1, 2. And the first one does so. So the mortar will land here, which is in the woods. There's no one there. It doesn't do anything. If we had landed on a unit, we would pin that unit. And the little pin marker are these little yellow tiddlywinks. Basically, that means this guy, they went to ground. They can't move during the kind of orders phase. So that's that. And all your mortars fire, if you have any. And, you know, we had one here. At most, we had, like, one in a section. I didn't have all that many, frankly. After you do the, like... And it's simultaneous and it's exchanged. So if I've got a mortar, I'm going to fire my mortar. I've got a mortar right here. So he's going to pop off. He's going to try to shoot the guy over here. And you do mortar fire back and forth, just pinning units. After that... You alternate the sector activation by with whoever the initiative player is. So I'm the initiative player because I have overall battlefield initiative. So I'm going to choose one of these sections to go first. So let's say we pick this one. And what happens is the reactive player goes first. They do all of their stuff. Then the active player does all of their stuff. So what we're going to do is we are going to flip over their card, and they chose the G section. So let's put some units out for them, just because this is all off to the side and kind of a hot mess. A couple of units, great. And they will... Let's put out some more Germans for them to fight. Great. So they are going to... They chose the G order. So they're going to follow the G section, which is this very bottom line on here, and you go from left to right. So the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to advance 2. And what that means is that every unit in this section can advance up to 2 spaces. But the advance means they have to move at least 1 space closer to the enemy edge of the board. So that's the difference here. A reposition is you can just move that many spaces without any restrictions, basically. Retreat, you can move up to 3 spaces, but you have to end at least 1 space closer to your own edge than you started. So you can move back 1 and some lateral moves, or you can move some lateral moves and then back 1. But you have to move at least 1 space further back. So you have to move your lines back, basically. And advance is the opposite. You have to move forward. You don't have to move all the way forward if that's dangerous, but you have to move at least a little bit forward. And this is where you get into maybe where the choice of your cards is very important, because you're like, advancing is good if I get the active, but if I don't get the actives, then repositioning and retreating isn't terrible. But, being pigeonholed into things that you might not be, might not be the best option for you, can be very, very interesting. So, everyone has to advance 2. So what we're going to do is, I guess we're just going to go, well, this is going to be real bad. We're going to move everyone. He's going to move 2, and he's going to move 1 as well. So everyone has to move. Then we do our machine gun fire. And the machine gun fire, basically you lay down fire, and this was something that's very interesting, is you don't have to have a machine gun to lay down machine gun fire. It's just kind of, it abstractly represents the machine gun nests and machine guns firing in support of things. It's kind of generic, and it's fairly variable as well. You get 1s, 3s, 1s, 2, 4s. I feel like I saw some, 4s, 1s, 3s. So you just throw, as long as there's people in range, you can tag them with it. So what you're going to do is you're going to then start bopping people with machine gun fire. Again, as long as they're within line of sight. And this is where you start getting into the really interesting parts of this game, on top of all the orders, is damage isn't done, this guy shoots this guy. It's much more abstract than that. And no unit can take more than 1 point of damage, so to speak, within a given phase. And so what that means is that you're going to pepper a line with a little bit of damage in this machine gun phase. When it comes to, you might drop an artillery that's going to do some damage in an artillery phase if you've got a bombardment on your card. And then you might have a combat where you're going to shoot them with your rifle fire, and that's going to be able to do another round of damage. So you have to go through layers of your weapons and fire to be able to actually kind of start eliminating units. You can't just do, one machine gun, all my machine guns shoot one guy, and he does 1 million damage, and he's eliminated. Every other wargame does that. This one does not. And I think it's excellent in the way that it puts you in a kind of mood to play. So what we're going to do is we're going to set, so this guy is in line of sight, this guy's in line of sight, and so is this guy. And why that's important is because we have a target priority. When you're laying down any kind of fire, you go to this little target priority, and you go into open hexes first, and it's 1 CD equals 1 damage. So I've got 3 machine gun CDs. So open, 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 all of these are in the open. So the first one goes on him, and the Germans only have 3 steps. So they flip over, and he flips over for 1, and he flips over for the 3rd CD. And that's because these 2 are in cover, and in cover is much further down in the combat, in the target priorities. You shoot the guys out in the open first, right? Those are the ones who are being seen. Those are the ones who are taking the brunt of the fire. So that's the machine gun damage, which was pretty nice, right? That was pretty nice. Then they're going to do accurate fire as a general order, and all of these are keywords. So you just look on here for your accurate fire, you say 2-step loss to a unit in line of sight. And so let me just double check that bad boy, if that's not in combat. Let's see. Acting player applies 2-step losses to a unit in this sector within line of sight of a friendly unit in this sector. Nope. And so a keyword can allow you to kind of do something. So within line of sight, we've already done 1 step, but now we're in a different section, so we can do some more damage here. We're going to apply 2-step losses. And we will do it, I don't know if it particularly matters, we're going to do it to this guy in the middle. So the first step loss, or I guess it's the second, adds a little disc, because each of these has 3 step losses, so use a little marker, and then we apply 2 with the accurate fire, so the second one eliminates the unit. He goes into the little dead pool that's in the bottom of this corner of here. That was our accurate fire. Now we go into the little shell holes, and shell hole says both players have half their total inflicted damage. And what that means is that if we do a combat in this section, which I'm pretty sure we will based on this card, that will total up all of the damage that we do and a number of CDs available, combat damage to apply, and that's going to be cut in half. because everyone's everyone's in their shell holes, crater holes, things like that. There's a bit more cover, so to speak. So those general orders and reactive orders, it gives you a passive ability and tones down what the attack is going to do. Now that the reactive player is finished, the active player is going to go, and yes, so we're going to do reposition 4. So we can move and reposition all of our units, and we want to do that because things like this hill blocks line of sight here, these trees block line of sight as well, so we're going to move up, 1, 2, we're going to move here, and we're going to move here, so that everyone's basically adjacent. We're going to get more bonuses for being adjacent, and it allows everyone to be able to bring their firepower to bear, because this guy was basically blocked almost everywhere that was in range 2 and wouldn't have been able to shoot, so we kind of bring everyone up. Then we're going to lay down 3 points of machine gun fire. Again, you can't like dogpile someone, and American units have 4 steps in this. Germans only 3. Most of the Germans only 3. So they're going to have 1 step here, 1 step here, and 1 step here. And the other thing which I did not mention, and I should have done, is that every time you do any amount of damage. So we just did 3 step losses. The initiative moves 1 for each one of those step losses. Now, I think the Americans inflicted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is swinging all the time, but basically any amount of damage that's getting done. So it's all the way up at this end now. But if you do lots of damage, if you're killing guys, this is going to swing towards your end, which means you then have the initiative. It's this momentum thing. You take ground, kill a bunch of enemy units, break through, you have the initiative. It stays on your side. You're more likely to be the active player to keep that push going. If it stalls, it's going to swing the other way. And it's very, it can be tough to get back. Very, very cool. So, having done all of that, so now we're going to activate our orders here. And so the first thing we have is Combat 5. And what that means is that everyone who is within range 5 can open fire and contribute to this attack. We only have guys adjacent here, but in these big messes, you can have some long-range machine gun fire, long-range rifle fire. You can get into some pretty interesting weight of fire that's going on. So what you're going to do is you're going to add up all of your combat damage, basically. So infantry contribute 1 CD, 1 combat damage. And then, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Germans, and we've got 1, 2, 3 for the Americans. And part of that is because mortars don't contribute. They just don't in this phase. So, Germans 4, Americans have 3. However, if you're adjacent to the enemy, it's another +1. So every German unit is adjacent to an American unit. So the Germans actually have 8, and the Americans actually have 6. If you had any MGs, so if we had an MG here as well, he's going to be a 2 base +1 for adjacent. So that hits 3. You start to get into some real strong stuff with those MGs as well. But we'll just say it's 8 versus 6. But remember, we have the shell holes, so we're going to half that. So we actually only have 4 versus 3 in the end. And so what you're going to do is you're going to assign damage following that target priority again. And again, this part's simultaneous, so we're going to look at out in the open costs 1 CD. So we have 1 step done. We're going to remove that and flip it over. So that's 2 steps. That's 1 damage. Then this guy's out in the open. He's actually out in the open. So we're going to remove that and do 1 step to him. Then this guy is in the woods. And when you're in the woods, it costs 2 CDs to do 1 damage. Luckily we had 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to flip him as well. And we're following that because there's no heavy weapons out in the open, and there's no HQ units out in the open. So then you go to urban woods or rail hexes, and you start with infantry units. So we'd have to damage the infantry unit before we could damage a heavy weapons unit that's in cover as well. The target priority is just, it's very, very, very cool the way that it works. And the Americans are going to do the same thing. It's going to be reciprocal. This guy is in the open, so he's going to take 1 damage. And then everyone else is in the woods, and it's going to take 2 damage to 2 points, our remaining 2 points, to do 1 damage to him. This guy's already had 1 step loss, so we're going to put it on him. But we would have to do 1 to each of these before we could kind of cycle back in this phase. And you can't even do that. Everyone only ever takes 1. It gets really spicy when you have these huge combats with lots of combat, with a high combat number, with everyone ranged. Because you'll get into something like, I got 24 combat damage, and you have 11 combat damage. But if you're in the woods, you know, all my combat damages are going to be 2 for 1 to put a step loss on someone, and you end up with an exchange, basically. It's so cool the way that it works. Don't chuck any dice. It's just move. So your maneuver is important so that you can bring your full weight of fire down on someone from an advantageous position. I just love it. This is such a cool system. Having done the combat, that's the combat. Again, we did 1, 2. So 1, 2, but it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So just so I guess we're gonna move 1. We'll do a net 1. Again, anytime you're doing damage, this initiative marker is moving. Just think it's the coolest thing. Having done that, we then go to our Rally 2. And Rally 2 says you remove X, pinning, and or falter tokens from units in this sector. And we'll just double check to make sure that there are no other rules. So these are falter tokens. We're going to remove 1. We're going to remove 2. So this was that was a pretty good attack. The 2 damage that I took, I was able to shake off by blowing the whistle and having everyone rally a little bit, but I inflicted 3 step losses here. Now, the defensive fire was very good on me as well, but that's just where it stands. So and then having completed this, I chose to do that one. Then the ally player chooses to do the next section. They can move on to this one, and you do all of them, and then you do that all over again. But I cannot stress to you how cool it is, and how much I really, really enjoy the fact that you're moving guys, and they will fire. There's no, you chuck a dice and roll a 1, and they don't do anything. That doesn't feel good in war games. Let's be honest. At this scale, everyone's shooting when they see a guy, right? It's the whites of his eyes, right? It's very much that. You move guys up, they open fire. And it reminds me of Fields of Fire and Wind. I think that's part of the reason that I like that. When you do a combat, everyone who's eligible just pops off. And then how you allot and assign that damage through those target priorities, the guys out in the open, obviously going to take the weight of fire. The guys who are in the woods are getting targeted less, and when they are targeted, it's less effective because they have the cover. I just think it's so good. The machine guns are very, very powerful, and you feel that in this. Because if you've got a machine gun and he's, adjacent to someone, you will absolutely... He contributes so much damage, it's kind of insane. And so when you get large groups and lines of people, which you will, the combats can get very, very bloody very, very quickly. And again, it's that World War I attritional style. Everyone's going to take a little bit of damage. But if you can get an artillery fire in to pop off a bunch of guys, everyone's going to take a little bit more damage. If you can open up with the machine gun fire as well, those CDs, you can do a little bit more damage. And the layers of damage, that if you can get those to apply, you can get in some very, very withering fire. But making that work is very difficult, because you've got to issue the commands, make sure that you have the initiative so you can choose to make sure you do the optimal one. Then you've got to maneuver to get yourself into position so that the people are in line of sight. And you can bring to bear your weight of fire. Love it, love it, love it. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. Tiddlywinks. First war game with Tiddlywinks that I played, maybe.
It definitely has Tiddlywinks. It has yellow Tiddlywinks and red Tiddlywinks.
But, which is a cute way of doing it, because they're see-through, you can still see the numbers and stuff underneath them.
I just hit a Tiddlywink across the table.
But it's a game where there was... I don't know. A lot of war games we play, I can bring a lot of assumed knowledge to it.
Absolutely.
This one, I was able to bring very little.
And frankly, the more you check that at the door, the better you're going to get onto this game. You're going to catch it.
And it's not that I hate that other stuff. It was very refreshing to play something that was so different.
Yeah, agreed.
Worthington often puts games out where you're like, huh.
Makes you think.
Yeah, like that. This hits different. And this is very much that.
Yeah,
and I
would agree.
Very, very, very cool to play because it plays so differently from other games.
We have played many of John's games, from Maori Wars to, I'm trying to think of other ones we've played. I know we've played.
Did he
Plains Indian Wars? Yes. And we've got several others that we need to play. Revolution Road was another one.
That was his. Okay, that's what I was going to say.
From Compass.
I thought it was his.
I don't know. He looks at things differently.
That's true.
He's not. I don't believe he's shackled to the concept of this is a hex encounter war game and this is what we got to do with a CRT, and I like that about him. He's willing to take some chances with cards. He's willing to take some chances with the way your actions are used and taken, and I think that makes his games to me feel very fresh.
And I believe. I think this game is very near and dear to his heart. I think he has some family ties to this game as well.
Okay.
I believe. I feel like I remember that from a couple of years ago I met him.
He might have that in the playbook. But...
Yeah. But, this is a game that I know he sat down and designed with his sons. I think he's very proud of it from that standpoint as well.
Yeah.
And it is just...
very good.
It really
good.
is.
Very
this
good.
is... I don't know what I was expecting from this game.
I'm not sure I was expecting that much.
I don't know. I don't know what it was, but boy, every turn that went by, as I'm like, well, this is fascinating.
Yeah,
because you can, even from the order in which you activate your sectors, because you activated this sector. Well, when it's my turn, I can run some of them off into this sector. And then I'm going to choose to activate this sector and run them on further again.
And I think that was something you did. You caught that on much earlier than I did. And you moved several units. You did some stuff here, and then you moved a couple units over to make your attacks better.
This flank was taken care of. I can swing a couple guys around. There's just so many neat things about this game.
And that is that concept of the commands and colors. That's the concept of keeping your guy on the line between the left and the center, or running him into the center because you look at your hand of cards and you're like, I got 5 center cards coming up, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, there was just a lot of really cool elements like that I think, once again, the more you play, the more that's going to be rewarded.
Yeah, there is a lot of subtlety to this game.
Yeah.
And I think that gives it a lot of legs.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's a single battle, and the scenarios are just
there's 3 scenarios.
Different times and parts of it. Yep. There are a lot of games where it's one battle, and you kind of play it once, and you're like, all right,
I got that.
I did that.
Yeah.
And you maybe play it again, we'll switch sides. Or, But this one... the first game you're gonna play just figure out what on earth it is you're doing and how to do it well. But God, the level of subtlety and the level of change you're gonna get from your cards and how you issue commands is gonna vary so much that no 2 games of this are gonna look the same.
Nope.
And I think that is very, very cool. Even though the terrain is static and the topography is static, you're gonna try to do certain things, but it is gonna look very different every time you crack this one out.
Yeah.
In an 8-page rulebook.
Which always kind of blows me away.
Huge credit.
Because I know a lot of war games, 8-page rulebook is not enough.
You could. Other companies could easily make that a 16-page rulebook.
Easily. Yeah, it can be done. Yeah. But it's to Worthington's credit and to John Paniski and his son's credit that they were able to boil that down to 8 or 10 pages. It's just insane.
Yeah. They did a really good job on this.
I think maybe at the beginning they should have said something like, you know what? Check your assumptions at the door.
Yes.
Because you're going to have so many questions if you don't. And I don't know that I can stress that enough. That would have made this experience even that much better. And frankly, makes me want to play it immediately again to see how I treat it differently.
Yeah, you play and you're like, oh boy, this works very differently And so then you're like, okay, well, I would have set my units up differently, or I
Yeah.
would maybe not have played the cards that I did, or
Yep.
made such horrible blunders
Yep.
early on in the game, which have long-term ramifications.
Yeah. One more thing before we. Setup was so stupid of me, because what was I tied to? Because they're all over this map, the roads.
Oh yeah,
Like I was looking at those roads, going, "Dang, that's going to get me right in there." Blah blah blah. So I'm like lining my dudes up on the road. Every hex on this map, one movement point.
yeah. There's no again based on the scale of this and the maneuverability of men. There's no. You just everyone moves a number of hexes.
Yep.
There's no difficult terrain or anything
No,
like that.
no, there's not.
Like the terrain provides you defensive benefits in combat.
Yep.
And can block line of sight.
Line of sight. Yep,
all
that's
it does.
basically
has
it.
No effect on movement. And when I read that rule, because it says terrain, movement. Terrain has no effect on movement.
Yeah.
I read that when I was reading the rules, and I thought, what on earth is this
Yeah,
game?
you're right.
Like, what is this?
Yeah. So
And
anyway,
it works perfectly.
I just needed to check those at the door because I would
Yeah.
have done much better. I would have been more in it, and it just would have turned out to be a better experience, even a better experience.
'Cause it
Because
sounds-
this is a very good experience.
It sounds like it's so weird, but the movement that you get on your cards and the type of movement it is, advance, retreat, or reorg, reposition, it works so well. I love
it does.
I think it's so interesting.
Yep. This is a great. Actually, I'm going to say it. This is a great game. I am going to say it. This is a great game.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It was so good.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite one of his games that we've played.
Man, I really liked Maori Wars quite a bit.
I did too.
But I think I would almost agree with you. I think I like this one better than I liked that one.
I would.
That one had some cool stuff in
I
it
would
too.
tip it to this one only because this has a much better rulebook.
Okay.
That one needed one more editing pass.
Yeah.
Just for there was
Clarity.
some vagaries in there that we had to house rule. But this one, set it up, play it, boom.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a very. I think it is a very clean game. I think the rulebook is pretty tight.
Yeah.
And it worked very, very well in a game system that is basically completely different from anything that I've played in reality.
No doubt. No doubt.
And I just think there was so much to glean from this and to experience. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Devil Dogs, Belleau 1918 from Worthington. Go check this out.
Yeah.
If you're interested in World War I and you want to fight something that's different, or if you're looking for a game system that is unique and challenging, something different, give this a look in. This is something here. I will say that. This is something.
I also think about, I'm sure you could develop a solitaire way to work these cards.
Probably.
That would make it very interesting and very engaging, yet keep those hidden pieces of information.
Yeah, that would be
I don't know how you're going to do that, because that's a big part of this.
Because if you were to do it randomly, it would probably be not great.
It would end up, they didn't do anything.
You could probably do it.
Well, maybe you just take the best effect on the card. I don't know.
Because between the randomness of, if you just dealt the cards out randomly and the randomness of the initiative that's going to then change what else on the card, you could probably get away with it.
Yeah, you probably could.
It may not be the best thing in the whole world, but
you're probably going to play it two-handed. That's the way you're probably going to, and just do best move possible.
Yeah, because this is, you want to play this two-player.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
So, Devil Dogs from Worthington, give this a go. Check it out. This big thumbs up from me.
Me too.
So, appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.